Apex Online Racing is sponsored by Elgato, who created this lovely stream deck. For more information about the stream deck, the link is in the description below.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to coverage of round 4 of the Apex Online Racing GT3 League of the Tier 1 category on the PC platform. Today is just going to be me flying solo this time round. Unfortunately, Fizzy is busy with a family event, and King Kodiak was due to join me in the commentary box as well, but unfortunately his missus has fallen unwell, so he is taking the time to look after her, and we wish her a speedy recovery. Hopefully she is all good and she'll be all on the mend fairly soon. But yes, coverage today of round 4. We're going to be racing at Road America, and here is your track guide, driven by Dow King, but with commentary from the Ace.
So, hello then everybody, my name's the Ace, and welcome along to another Hot Lap video for the Apex Online Racing GT3 Leagues. This is Season 12 and round number 4 of the Championship, and we are at Road America. We're riding on board THR Dow King's Mercedes AMG GT3 car, and we've just crossed the start finish line now. We're going to spot the braking board, the 200 metre board on the left hand side wall, down 2 gears, chuck the car in, get the car rotated on the rear axle a little bit, don't run out too wide. Now down into turn 2, we're using the Pirelli boards on the left, brake at the first board, down 2 gears again, modulate the power through the corner and on the exit. Don't run out too wide if you can avoid it, because it will scrub your speed off down this next long straight. Now you've got to keep the car over to the left and then back over to the right again for the braking point for turn number 3. Again, you'll use the reference boards, 200 metres, down 3 gears, chuck the car in, watch the exit because it will bite you on the traction. Now up into turn number 4, really off camber corner here, you've got to be careful on the power again to not loop the car around. Turn 5, quite a fast right-hander, watch the curb doesn't bite you because it will lift the car up a little bit. Down to turn 6, again 200 metre board, stay away from the curb if you can avoid it. Watch the power on the exit as Dal gets it a little bit lit up there under the Speedville bridge into the carousel, modulating the power as you can hear. He's now hard on it, he's going to clip the apexes pretty nicely just there, and now you've got the fast kink, so you can take this absolutely flat. Full commitment from Dal King there, and he's clipped both curbs nicely. Now he's going to move over to the right hand side to get the best braking point on the left for turn 9. Down 2 gears, again modulating the power, watching the curb on the exit. Doesn't want to be ruining the lap here. Full commitment through turn 10. And then into the final corner, brakes rather early. Gets the car rotated on the power hard, runs out wide onto the curb a little bit. And then you've got the long slog up the hill to finish the lap, and that is a lap of Road America.
So there was the flying hot lap provided by Dow King with commentary of the Ace, and here is the man who provided that commentary of the hot lap driving around the circuit at the moment. The guys are actually going to be participating in a 90-minute race for this round 4. There will be no qualifying beforehand, and the grid order will instead be in reverse championship order, I believe, or close to the reverse championship order. So it's going to mix things up for the guys a little bit. It's going to make it a very interesting race, and obviously with the 90 minutes could also mean that we will see a pit stop halfway through for fuel. But yeah, well, the guys have a mandatory pit stop anyway that they need to serve during the race. So yeah, the guys will obviously all be pitting at some point, and trying to take fuel on board. I doubt they need to take tyres, as I'm sure they are running the hard tyre. My name is Yorkie065 and I'm going to be your commentator for this evening, and as I said, whilst we're doing the intros prior to the track guide, unfortunately Fizzy can't make it for this evening due to family commitments, and then King Kodiak, who was hoping to join us, has unfortunately had to also be absent and look after his missus, who is a little bit ill. Here is Bo driving around the circuit though. We've got 4 minutes remaining in this little practice session that the guys are doing. It's just taking a 10-minute practice session, make sure the guys are all warmed up, there's no technical issues for them, and it gives them a little bit of a opportunity to resolve any possible technical issues that they may have. And actually there is one right there. We have gone and lost a good chunk of the lobby. We're only down to 12 drivers, and previously we did have a good 24 to 26 drivers, so I imagine we'll probably see a new lobby being formed relatively soon in order to get everyone back in. Either that or yeah, we've only got 3 minutes remaining, so it's not like the drivers are going to be able to hop back into this lobby, which is pretty unfortunate. Not a brilliant way to start off the evening, but we'll stick with the on-track action just for the moment until a new lobby is created, and we'll talk a little bit about this Road America circuit that the guys are going to be racing around here. So currently watching Cryptic in his McLaren 650S GT3 car come across the line. And you can see Pantera operator's now just gone to the top of the leaderboard with a 2 minute and 7 second. I didn't quite see the full lap time before he ended up leaving the session, but yeah, the lap times be interesting to keep an eye on. I'll pop it onto this screen here, and we shall get ourselves sorted with a new lobby. So, like I said, not the best start to the stream, but hopefully we can get this new lobby fired up, and hopefully we won't have any further issues, and we can get into the racing action as quickly as possible. What I will do is take this opportunity actually to run you through the starting order of the race. So Gamisuk is going to be starting in pole position, with Dakusa in second, Adalexis third, Godfather of Shift in fourth, Bo in fifth, Kovacs David starting in 6th place, with 2 Desert Pack in 7th, Pantera in 8th, Capo will be in 9th, and Gribbs will be in 10th place. Yamo will be 11, the fan favourite. P12 will be taken by Daniel Nestarovic. Aid the Ace will be starting in P13 with Mr. Van Orman in 14th. JK will be starting 15th, the Ripper 16th. Villalobos in 17th, Jardier in 18th. He's been having a bit of a rough season so far, not been really showing quite the same dominance that he's had in the previous seasons, but yeah, he'll be starting in 18th place, with the Heidi in 19th, Cryptic in 20th, Murph in 21st, 22nd occupied by Benazili, CJB in 23rd, the Birdsky in 24th, 25th is occupied by Suomi. Empower will be starting in 26th, 27th will be taken by Dow King, 28th the Operator, Leon the Sick One in 29th, Scott V in 30th, and then Murphy in 31st. So that will be the rough grid order. Obviously it depends on how many guys are actually in the lobby. Obviously we've factored in for 31 drivers there. Hopefully we can have a full grid today. That'll be fantastic, and obviously help keep me very, very busy throughout the race duration, trying to find where all the action is going to be, and hopefully there'll be plenty of it for me to actually commentate on. So there you can see, obviously up on the screen, the details about Road America. 14 turns, quite a lengthy circuit. We're going to be starting in-game. Start time will be 6 in the morning with hazy weather, which should clear up and go into medium cloud. It's going to be 42 laps in total, which should equate to about 1.45 hours, so 90 minutes in total. And there you can also see the track length as well is 6.51 kilometers in total. So yeah, quite a lengthy one for the drivers. And we are just getting a new lobby set up now. Hopefully we should be diving back in fairly soon. And hopefully we can get things underway with the coverage here for round 4. Obviously, nice to see the guys turning up in the chat. If you can give us a little hello, a little wave, and obviously thumbs up for quality of both audio levels and also sound levels, just making sure that everything with the stream itself is actually all good and working very, very nicely. That would be very much appreciated. And although I was absent from the last round, round 3 at Long Beach, it was a very, very entertaining race. We saw a very interesting 3-wide battle with a number of drivers, or shall I say 3 cars going 3 wide. I believe it was a lap driver that they were passing. I think it was Dowking and possibly Suomi, who went 3 wide. I could be wrong a little bit there, but I know that Dowking was one of the drivers that was yeah, battling for position. It could have been, it was either Dahidi or Suomi. I can't quite remember off the top of my head, as I did watch that back last week. But it was a very, very entertaining race. Operator ended up taking the win in that race and showing that dominant form that he has provided so far this season. Obviously, we've done 3 rounds so far, and he has won all 3 of those rounds as well. So, very, very strong form that he is displaying. Dowking, his teammate, has had a pretty good start to the season. Got 4th place in the first round, and then 2 second places in rounds 2 and 3. And Dowking did actually have an incident at Long Beach, which put him quite far down the field. He had to repair with some damage, but he managed to recover back up to 2nd place, as the incident that he had occurred quite early on in the race. Dahidi finished up in 3rd, with CJB in 4th, Suomi 5th, Bertsky 6th, Murph 7th. The Ripper finished in 8th, Villalobos 9th, and Benazidi rounded up the top 10 for round 3. Now, the good thing is we are back into the lobby, and we are back once again in another practice session. So the drivers just going out onto the track. We've got 27 cars in the lobby at the moment, so the list of drivers that I read out earlier in their starting qualifying positions will be a little bit jumbled up. So obviously with some drivers absent, it's going to bump some drivers higher up the grid from the starting position. But yeah, hopefully we can get underway with the race in about 4 minutes time. You can see Mr. Van Orman driving in his black Lamborghini with those yellow highlights on the front canards, that wing mirrors, and also the end plate of that rear wing. Villalobos. It seems like 1 or 2 drivers may actually already have pit lane violation. No, it doesn't show any penalties. I'm just seeing it from the race feed is popping up there. But yeah, a couple of drivers just going around, just getting themselves nicely warmed up. Villalobos there in his red Mercedes, as you can see. Capo in his Lamborghini. Bo, who we saw earlier in his McLaren 650S GT3. And Alexis is back in the pits. JK is just crawling out onto the circuit now, coming out the pit exit. Stojovic out in the lemon Lamborghini with the blue trimmed accents. The Ripper there, as you can see, and the red Lamborghini driving around with 2 Desert Pack in his Audi R8 following behind. Murphy's currently sat in the pit lane in his Mercedes AMG. Godfather of Shift, getting the rear end out. Coming through the latter part of the circuit. Driving in that Porsche 911 GT3, and actually had a pretty strong showing in round 2 at Monza. The car did very, very well. Quite surprising for myself and also Fizzy. Unfortunately, who was it? It was driving and was Godfather of Shift's teammate. I think Godfather of Shift was putting in a very decent, good performance, although he made a couple of mistakes as well. You can see just flicking through some of the other drivers. There's the Ace. He is the driver who's following 2 Desert Pack, so 2 Audis running together. Pantera is the other 911. So yeah, Godfather and Shift and Pantera are having a good round 2 before they had a couple of mistakes which knocked them a little bit further back down the field. Seeing a couple of drivers actually leaving the lobby once again, so it sounds like there's more issues and there could be another lobby restart. There's another Porsche 911 out on the grid as well. That, I believe, is a new one. So there's Kovacs David. I'm not going to be able to keep up with the list of names, so unfortunately, yeah, seems like we are going to be creating a new session once again. So just bear with us one moment whilst we get these technical issues hopefully sorted, done and out the way, and we can actually get some green flag racing for you guys. Hopefully you're well, and hopefully you guys are happy here in the chat. I do appreciate your patience whilst we try and sort these issues out and get a new lobby up and running. And I'd be interested to hear who you guys have in mind as to who will be the winner of this race. Who do you think could take the race win here, considering that the grid is all modelled up? It's pretty much close to reverse championship standings order. So the guys who have been doing very well so far this season will be starting from the back, and obviously those drivers who haven't done quite so well will be starting at the front. But yeah, let me know in the chat who you think could come away with the race win here. Who do you think is the favourite to win? Obviously, I know Jarmo is a fan favourite for a number of you, and I can see a couple of comments there already saying Jarmo should be taking the race win easily. It'll be very, very good to see Jarmo taking that win. I'm hoping I'm saying his name right. Whether it's Jarmo or Yarmo, I do apologise if I do butcher any names of any of the drivers. But yeah, it'll be good to see someone else win today other than Operator Dowking has been knocking at the door for a race win for quite some time now. Will today be his day for victory, or will it be once again taken by Operator, or will it be taken by somebody else? So hopefully we'll have a new lobby up relatively soon. And hopefully we can get this this race underway for you guys. So here we go then. We are actually loading back in with a new lobby, and the guys will be once again going out on track, trying to keep this this warm-up practice session period beforehand, just so the guys, if anyone does have any issues, they can try and get them quickly sorted and actually get back into the lobby I think possibly the reason why we restarted the lobby was previously we only had 5 minutes, which means that if any of the guys did have any technical issues, they've got 2 minutes in order to get them sorted and back into the lobby, and that's starting from the beginning of the session. So there's basically a 3-minute cut-off period in the last 3 minutes of the session where the drivers aren't able to rejoin back into the session. And here we go then, with the drivers coming out back onto the circuit. 26 in the lobby at the moment, so it seems like we're missing one. Hopefully we'll just see them coming back out fairly soon, as operator is getting his car very much sideways, coming out the exit of turn 1 there. And the operator is being followed out on track by his teammate Dowking. Their operator in the blue Mercedes AMG here in the foreground, with Dowking there in the grey Mercedes AMG running behind him. Here you can see CJB has just come out the pits as well. And just looking at some of the other drivers, Stojovic out there on track. The majority of the drivers are out on circuit. We now got 27 drivers once again, which is good. I believe that is the correct amount for today. It's Scott who was driving the Porsche 911 that I saw previously in our second attempt of this lobby. So it's interesting to see that he's picked the Porsche 911. We've seen him driving the Bentley in previous seasons, so he's obviously decided to park that car and take out the Porsche instead. See how things go there with this one. Benazili has followed him out onto the circuit in that very lime yellow Mercedes AMG that we see there. We see Cryptic is still in the pit lane at the moment, with Capo as well, and then Ad Alexis is the other driver who's still in the pit lane, but he's actually driving out onto the circuit now, which is good. It's good to see. So Benazili is nice and close to someone else, and the Ace as well is also driving around the circuit too. And there you can see Bo in the orange McLaren up in the distance, and then that will be either Godfather or Shift or Pantera in the Porsche 911 directly there in front of us. Coming into that flat out king because the Ace catches the curb there. Gets very, very sideways, but obviously the guys don't need to worry at the moment. It's not going to affect the drivers in this session, as it's not counting to anything. The grid order has already been determined, and the drivers will be forming up into the correct grid order at the beginning of their manual formation lap, and we'll do the usual AOR manual formation lap that we do in pretty much all our Project Cars leagues. So seeing a number of drivers actually have penalties, but again, doesn't matter. Grid order has already been determined, so that's not going to count for anything. Villalobos is the first driver to put a time on the board, but again, it doesn't matter. The guys are just going around, so if anything, this is kind of a nice indication for us as to what kind of lap times that drivers will be looking to do during the session. I don't think the 2:29 is quite representative of a natural race time. Neither is Scott's time that he's put on at the moment. The Heidi's also in the Porsche 911 as well. It's good to see him. A little bit more variety in the cars. He's coming across the line to begin a flying lap by the looks of it. Acting around the circuit. So there's Bo again in his nicely distinctive orange McLaren. And Alexis coming across the start-finish line. He's not set a lap, but we did see him come out of the pits a little bit later than everyone else, so he's beginning his lap now, but he does have his windscreen wipers on, unusually. You don't really need them here in these conditions. It's pretty dry, just hazy. It should clear up later. Oh, this is CJB out on the gravel trap playing around in the sand. Whereabouts is that? That he's actually gone off, so that's Coming into the latter part of the lap. This is the penultimate turn that they're entering now, so it's kind of the back section through the forested, wooded area. And it's quite a tight corner that he ended up spinning and probably just taking a little bit too much speed actually going into the turn. So here we go, some lap times that are a bit more representative of actual race pace, with mid 207s, a few high 207s as well, and power, with the mid 207 at the moment, 207.5. A couple of low 208s and some high 208s as well. So there's a bit of a spread between the drivers at the moment. I wouldn't say Mr. Van Orman's lap time is overly representative of what he could do. So I don't think we'll quite see a field spread of 3 seconds, probably looking more around to about 2.5 seconds. Scott goes and pops himself into a temporary 16th position. Empower still plodding around in that circuit with Mercedes. I believe that was an SLS that was actually following him there. See if we can pick that one up. So Villalobos plodding around as well. Carfax David and his Black Merc. He's got Father a shift in the Porsche. De Heidi in the Porsche. Boat and his McLaren. And Alexis going up to take a provisional pole. And there it is, D'Couza. He was driving in the Mercedes SLS coming into the kink. This car does have an awful lot of straight line speed, but it is an older generation GT3 car, and they do struggle a little bit more in terms of their aero efficiency and also their braking ability as well, especially in comparison to the newer GT3 cars. But this could be quite a strong track for the SLS actually, if it can use its top speed to its full effect. Obviously, start-finish straight here is quite a nice big one, and there's also the back straight as well between turns 4 and 6. The Americans have a slightly odd numbering system here for this circuit, where turn 1 is numbered turn 1, but then there's like a turn 2 and 3 between what would be traditionally turn 2, what is here. It's a little bit of an unusual numbering layout that they actually use, but yeah, there you go, Mr. Van Orman putting in a more representative time with a 206.9, so the guys are actually down in the 206s. So very, very impressive pace there. Yarmo, fan favourite, driving around the circuit, actually currently in 12th position, which isn't far from his actual grid starting position. He's lined up to be starting on the grid in P11. And for those of you who have just joined us, we do already have a determined grid order. So what you're seeing here in terms of these positions in this session aren't going to be the actual starting positions that the drivers used. We do have a determined or predetermined grid order, and Yarmo will be starting from 11th place, so 1 place higher that he's currently positioned in this leaderboard. Yeah, sorry. De Heidi sat in the pits, just chilling out for the last minute. Hopefully things shall remain good, shall remain stable. Obviously with 27 drivers, things are looking good at the moment for the session. We've just got 40 seconds left before we'll be proceeding into the actual race session itself. Who am we taking a look? The Birdski. He was in the green Lamborghini that was following D'Couza around. He's also got a Mercedes AMG behind him, so he's in a bit of a Mercedes sandwich. A Mercedes Benz in front and a Mercedes AMG behind him. There's Empower plodding around in that Bilstein blue and yellow AMG GT3 car. Very, very nice livery. And there you have it. The session is complete. So hopefully the guys will pretty quickly be getting themselves back to the pit lane so we can proceed on with the session. It seems like Capo is still driving around at the moment. Scott's taken to the pit lane. Pantera is coming down the long back straight down into the heavy braking zone. It seems like he's on a flying lap, as it were. Possibly just testing out the setup, making sure it's all good. Empire, his next driver, is going to be coming across the line. He's coming through the very, very long right-hander carousel that just goes on and on and on forever, and eventually you can start to really get on the throttle to let the car slide out wide before coming into the kink. You do have to really commit yourself, but you've got to watch out for the curves on both the inside and also on the outside on the exit. Just touching those can very easily unsettle the car before the very heavy braking zone. Slamming down through the gears. Gets through there quite nice and tidily. Comes through the penultimate turn now. And then into the final corner. Trying to line them up for a decent exit, although running way out wide and invalidating his lap time that he has that before diving into the pits himself, just making sure and double checking to see where that pit entry point is. Pantera will be the next man, or the next driver, across the line. Capo will be the last guy, so Pantera coming up over the crest onto the start-finish straight now. He doesn't improve on his lap time, not that it will matter anyway. Will Capo improve on his lap time? He does, by about 0.3 of a second, I think I saw that. So here are what would be the qualifying positions if determining the grid if we were to be using the qualifying positions, but we are not using those. Instead, the guys will be using a predetermined grid order, so the guys will be organising themselves into that at the beginning of their formation lap. Just prior to that though, we do have a 2-minute grace period where the guys are able to double check that they've got the right setup applied to the car. Just make sure that they're all settled, everything is all good, hunky-dory, and they're all set for the race. And of course, making sure that their pit strategy is all set for this race, as it's going to be a 90-minute race that we're going to be doing here. It's going to be 42 laps in total, which should take us to around about the 90-minute mark, with a couple of minutes here or there kind of play either side, depending on the lap times that the guys are actually doing. But yeah, where it's a 90-minute race, there is the possibility of some strategy coming into play here. Obviously, the guys have a mandatory pit stop that they will need to serve, regardless of fuel loads and tyre loads and tyre wear, shall I say. But yeah, I don't think the GT3 cars will be able to do the entirety of the 90 minutes on one tank of fuel. So I think the majority of the drivers will probably start off with a full tank, and then when it comes to the tank being empty, they'll dive into the pit lane and take their fuel stop to top up the fuel to get themselves to the end of the race. So this 2-minute period should be up relatively soon. Just take a quick moment to take a swig of water, clear my throat, ready for this 90-minute onslaught. Let us know in the comment section below who you would put your money on for the race win here. And obviously, in a moment, the guys will actually form up in their correct grid order, so you'll have a better idea as to who is starting where and who could potentially have a better chance over others in order to get those better positions. Or, well, yeah, the potential higher finishing position. So at the moment, Dakuza is leading the way. If Gamasuk is in the lobby, then he should be starting on pole. However, I cannot see his name in the list, so I believe Dakuza will be starting on pole, with Adalexis starting in second once he's caught up to Godfather of Shift and has got himself in front of him. Bo should be starting in fourth. Kovacs David in fifth. To Desert Pack, yep, they're in sixth position. Pantera will be in seventh. Capo will be beginning his race in eighth place. Yamo is due to start in either 9th or 10th place. Gibbs is marked to be in front of him, however I don't see him in the session, so Yamo, the fan favourite, should be starting in 9th place for this race, with Nesterovic starting behind him in P10. Aid the Ace starting in P11. Mr. Van Orman starting in P12. JK in P13 with the Ripper there in 14th, as you can see. Villalobos will be starting behind him in 15th, with Jardier starting in P16. De Heidi there in 17th place, with Cryptic TMG starting in 18th. 19th will be occupied by Murph, with Benazili in 20th, CJB in 21st. 22nd is occupied by the Birdski, with M-Power starting behind him in 23rd, as Suomi is absent from this race. Dowking 24th, Operator in 25th, and then Scott and Murph, as I believe it is the first rounds that they're actually participating in, will be starting from the back of the grid, and it basically just kind of eliminates any possibility of people trying to game the system and possibly thinking about taking a new car for the start or for this race to try and get themselves up in a higher grid position. So you can see the guys have got themselves now into a much tighter single file formation, just doing a little bit of tyre warming. If we bring up the track map there, you can see the spread of the cars around the circuit. It's just a couple of guys at the back, Scott and also Murphy, who are closing up. It's going to be a little bit interesting with Murph 87 there, and also Murphy as well. I have accidentally got those guys mixed up previously, even when Murphy wasn't actually racing and it was just Murph on track. But yeah, the guys have now got themselves quite nicely bunched up together. Relatively soon we should see them form up in their 2x2 formation, where they will form two trains and they will slow their formation lap pace from 120 kilometers an hour / 80 miles an hour down to 80 kilometers per hour and 50 miles per hour. So do that now. Form up into the two trains with the odd numbers on the right, with the race leader on the inside line for turn 1, and then the even numbers on the left, with P2 starting on the outside. And it's going to be any time between the bridge at the top of this crest here, where Dakuza can put his foot down in the acceleration zone, any time between now and the actual start-finish line. That will signify the beginning of the race. So you can see he's holding a nice constant speed. You'll see his throttle input jump up. There we go, with the race start, and we are underway for 90 minutes here at Road America with round 4 of the Apex Online Racing. The guys hurtling down towards turn 1. A nice big group of cars. Godfather of Shift just popping himself up into second place there. A couple of the other guys flowing through. So far things are looking pretty good. Road America tends to be quite a dangerous one on the start-finish line, and you can see there's a pretty definitive two trains as they come through turn 2. Currently watching M-Power trying to make positions, as it looks like that it is Dowking who is getting swamped by cars at the back. Jumping back up to the front though, top three are starting to spread out a little bit from the rest of the guys. We see a number of drivers going a little bit defensive. JK trying to go offensive on Jarmo in front of him, and also Mr. Van Orman. Jarmo at the moment dropping down from P9 down to P11, so he's lost 2 positions so far on this opening lap. If we jump back a little bit further, we can see quite a big squabble of cars as the operator is making up a number of positions so far. He started 3rd from last, so he's up a good 3 to 4 positions already on this opening lap, so a very good start for himself, obviously making way through the pack. And we can see as the guys are starting to come up towards the kink now, there's a little bit of spread between the top 4, coming a little bit further back as there's a couple of guys actually off wide coming through the kink. Obviously the dirty air is affecting their downforce levels and they weren't quite able to take that flat out, either that or they touched the curb and obviously tried to essentially bail out. We see the Stojovic there looking to the inside of Mr. Van Orman, but wasn't able to make that move stick coming into the turn. Cryptic jump on board with him, as we can see Dowking in front of him, Scott between the two, and then in front of Scott is the operator, so they're trying to make the gains coming through the field at the moment. His 2 Desert Pack currently in 5th place. He's not really made any gains so far on this lap. As we see a couple of guys behind us, is Mr. Van Orman and also Capo going side by side. Mr. Van Orman's got the inside line for turn 1, so he's going to take that position coming through the turn without too much issue, although he's having to go a little bit defensive to Capo coming down to turn 2 proper. I'm going to ignore the American corner numbering, as it just makes it a lot easier for myself, as unfortunately I do not have a track map up. Jardier, we can see there in P14, also hasn't really made any position gains at the moment, as we've got a couple of cars side by side. The Ripper having a look at Murph there in front of him as they come into the heavy braking zone. So far the guys have been doing a very good job of keeping it clean, as M-Power's coming up the inside of the Ripper in that heavy braking zone. The operators also cashing in on this, and Scott is having a look to the inside coming into the next turn as well. The Ripper could be losing multiple positions here in just a few sequence of corners, as one driver kind of forced their way through, and yet Scott does follow him through, and now also Dowking is having to go around the outside of the Ripper in the next braking zone. The Ripper letting Dowking go, just playing the safe game. It is a long race here that we do have for these guys. It's 90 minutes in total, so sometimes caution is the better part of valor, and it is better to just play it safe. Don't go too hard with the drivers around you, and just kind of let the field naturally spread and thin out, because obviously all the faster guys are going to be trying to work their way through up through the field, as a number of drivers are running out wide, Dowking included in those, and there's one of the drivers a little bit further up the field. I think it may have been CJB who was wide going through the very fast right-handed kink. But yeah, obviously with these faster guys coming through the field trying to work their way past the slightly slower drivers, we've got a big pack of cars here coming through the final turn. We've got Villalobos there immediately in front of us. Jarmo is also getting a slightly poor run in comparison to Villalobos. JK and Stojovic are also involved in this as well. Jardier is trying to pick up the slipstream and try and pick up positions. Hopefully we're not going to be seeing a 3-wide coming down towards turn 1. It's looking like it. There's 6-7 cars in this pack. This could be very dangerous. Play it cautious, guys, please. And it looks like things are being kept pretty clean so far. Jardier has been forced off the road a little bit by the it was the McLaren in front of him. He's now coming under threat to Heidi behind, but gives him a little bit of a squeeze on the apex there of turn 2. CJB coming around the outside of the Porsche, getting the good run off the corner. It's good to see him having a pretty good run at Jarmo and Jardier in front of them, but both of them blocking and occupying either side of the circuit. It's going to be pretty difficult for someone to sneak down the inside there, and yes, unless ZJB can get right up underneath Jardier, but it doesn't. Instead, Jarmo sacrificing the position. Suze Jardier dropping down into P14. He's now under threat from CJB, as we can see. Very close racing by these guys. I haven't seen any obvious contact or any obvious mistakes from anyone as of yet, which is very, very good and fantastic to see. At the moment, Dakuza running away with the lead, as you can see there, 1.5 second lead over Godfather of Shift. Adalexis isn't too far behind, about half a second in his Mercedes, and he's got a bit of a gap, just over a second to Bo, and Bo is very much under pressure from 2 Desert Pack coming into the next braking zone. 2 Des having a little bit of a look, go for the lunge, going a little bit deep possibly. No, he actually manages to make the apex quite nicely. Bo managing to hold it around the outside and retain that position though. Very, very good racing by the 2 there. It looked a little bit laggy from my perspective. We can see Kovacs David is right in there just behind them, as well as Pantera and Mr. Van Orman, who's getting a pretty decent run coming off of the final turn. Here you can see his view of the rear of Pantera's Porsche 911 as they're coming up the straight. Mr. Van Orman trying to suck up as much of that slipstream as possible to try and get a decent run. You can see 2 Desert Pack is under threat here from Kovacs David. Kovacs David trying to go around the outside of 2 Desert Pack. 2 Des gives it a little bit of a squeeze on the exit, and 2 Desert Pack manages to retain that position for the moment. Pantera coming down the inside of Kovacs David though, just behind him, and it looks like that Pantera has managed to gain the position. Mr. Van Orman coming very, very close to the back of Kovacs David's car as he lost a little bit of momentum through the turn. Villalobos, you can see here battling with Capo coming down the inside of him on the approach to the heavy braking zone at the end of this straight. This is prime overtaking opportunity. Villalobos is in the pound seat with that inside line, but Capo's going to try to hold it around the outside. Villalobos with that shorter route gets the run off the corner as well and manages to take P9 away from Capo, demoting him down into P10. And we can see here Jamo is finding him with a little bit of space, about half a second to the drivers either side of him. He's got JK in front of him and CJB behind him. And Jamo has actually managed to get himself up from 14th down up into 12th position. Jardier has actually gone and lost a couple of positions, now dropping to the back of this little mini train down into 15th place. So he's lost 2 or 3 positions somewhere along the line, and not too far behind him is Operator closing up behind with Empower is following through. Scott is still there very much in hot pursuit with Dow King as well, managing to keep it within the confines of the circuit. And that was, I believe, it wasn't TMG, it was Murphy who was running out wide. Murphy starting from the back of the grid has managed to get himself up into second to last position, but he'll be looking to try and hang with the guys in front of him and see if he can make up some more places later on in the race, as the Ripper is coming under threat from the Birdski and also Murph in that Mercedes SLS as well. So very action-packed first 5 laps that we have seen here. The Ripper coming under threat from that green Lamborghini behind him of the Birdski. The Birdski having a look to the inside line, get in that slingshot with Murph there lurking in behind as well. Oh, there's a little bit of contact between the 2 drivers, between Murph and the Ripper. That punted the Ripper out wide. That's allowed Murphy to actually gain 2 positions in that little incident, and Murph obviously forcing that error has gone and dropped back in behind TMG, and actually Empower's had a mistake somewhere along the line. It's actually dropped to the back of the field, so very unfortunate for him. Yamo's now dropped down into 16th position as he's got Operator for company. Also Dowking's there behind us and Scott as well, so this is a little bit insane, this race. There's just constant action so far. There's been no respite for a number of these drivers as the faster guys are having to try and work their way through the field. You can see Dowking weaving around a little bit, going to the inside of Yamo in the next corner. Yamo having to give him the racing room as Dowking was going a little bit deep. Yamo not really fighting it too hard and just letting him go through. I think he knows his best bet is to not hold these guys up too much so they're not losing too much ground to the leaders. Instead, just let them go, try and stick with them if possible, try not to run out too far out wide and pick up any slowdown penalties, and instead later on in the race try and pick up the positions then when the drivers are nice and close. Got a couple of guys with penalties already, CJB being one with a 30-second penalty. Wow, that will probably be for passing someone off track, I imagine, and Nestojevic with a 3-second penalty. If that is a passing off the track penalty, which CJB has with those 30 seconds, you can go to the stewards and appeal that and get reimbursed with those 30 seconds if they deem it to be a essentially a valid penalty. So coming back up to the sharper end of the field here in this race 2 Desert Pack at the moment in 5th position. Again, still not too far behind Scott. He's got Mr. Van Orman for company. Mr. Van Orman starting in and around P12, P11. He's made some good ground so far in this race, got himself up into P6. He's a man with some very, very good pace. So I imagine that he is pretty good, or is in with a relatively decent shout of taking the race win, providing that he can keep his car clean, work his way through the field progressively and hunt down the guys in front. Dakuza, I can see here in P1 at the moment, he's got himself a 3-second gap to add Alexis behind. I did say that the SLS could be a pretty strong car for the Road America circuit, and Dakuza certainly proven that at the moment. Ad Alexis in the Mercedes AMG has managed to get himself past the Porsche 911 of Godfather of Shift, as we can see that. Pantera, Godfather of Shift's teammate, is there following behind as Kovacs David goes and runs out wide. Coming through the kink there, that's going to allow Villalobos to potentially close up onto the back of him, and Kovacs David actually feeling like he needs to go defensive into this next right hand turn. It's going to give Villalobos the better run through the turn, as he's able to make use of the full width of the track, but wasn't really able to do anything about it, as Kovacs David had positioned himself rather nicely on the exit. Villalobos coming very, very close there on the exit. If he can tuck into the slipstream here, he could see himself creeping up alongside the Mercedes next to him. You can see a tiny little bit of warping there, but it seems like Villalobos does have the run over Kovacs David, running possibly slightly lower wing or slightly better aero efficiency, and does take that 8th position away from Kovacs in that first turn. Let's jump back a bit further down the field, as we can see Capo in 11th position, chasing down De Heidi in the Porsche 911 for 10th position. Jardier is there in P12 with the operator and Dowking working their way up through the field in P13 and 14. Scott's dropped off the back of Dowking a little bit. He's also left Benazili behind by about 1.5 seconds. He's got Nestojevic just in behind him. So pretty close battle there. CJB is going side by side with AD Ace. AD Ace with the inside line, coming into that left-hander, who have the inside line for this next left-hander as well. But CJB is going to try and hang it around the outside. They will need to give each other racing room, but CJB does get off track a little bit and ends up losing the position to the Ripper as well, as he almost lost the car there, bouncing over that curb. Could potentially come under threat from Murphy behind as well, as Murphy has managed to get himself up a number of positions, and also has Murph a pretty close company behind Empower. We saw had dropped to the back of the field earlier with a possible mistake from him. He's there now, working his way back up through the field. JK, we can see, has dropped off quite a significant amount, as has Cryptic, and also Jama as well. He's dropped well down the field. I think he may have potentially made a pit stop. Yes, he's got much more fuel than the other drivers. I didn't see the pit stop board for Yamo, but he's there with 116.5 litres of fuel, whereas others are kind of in and around the 95 litre mark. So Yamo making his pit stop pretty early, trying to get himself out of the traffic, give himself some clear air, and see if he can run some pretty decent lap times. The Heidi is now also doing the same thing as well, trying to grab him. There he is. So he's pulling into the pit lane now to serve his mandatory pit stop take on the fuel that he'll need for the remainder of this race, get himself into that clearer air, and then just run his lap times and see where he'll come out once the pit stop phases are over. Because obviously with these faster guys trying to work their way through the field of drivers starting in this reverse championship order, obviously with all the battling they're going to be losing time in comparison to those who are running in clear air and can run their own standard race pace. And although it isn't quite as fun or as exciting, obviously it works and pays dividends in terms of strategy and working your way up through the field a little bit quicker without actually having to do the hard work of trying to physically pass your opponent on track. So we're seeing a number of the guys coming into the very long right-hander. See him just balancing and playing with the throttle before getting hard on the accelerator out through the exit. Just cook that outside left tyres. Coming into the fast kink. A little bit of a lift there by Pantera. He also did run out a little bit wide. Caught the curb there. Villalobos not really close enough though to try and threaten Pantera, although he's going to go diving down the inside under braking into that right-hander, but Pantera is just going to come straight back underneath him as Villalobos ended up running too deep on the brakes there. Wasn't able to slow the car down. But yeah, a little bit opportunistic there by Villalobos, but wasn't quite able to make that work. Here we can see Operator has now managed to get himself up into 11th position with Jardier in P10, so they've managed to work their way past Capo and a couple of the other drivers as well. And we're actually seeing Operator actually making a move on Jardier. Coming into turn 1, he's managed to get that move pretty much done before the turning point. Jardier is actually starting to come back at him though. Jardier looking to the inside, coming into the next right-hander. Operator having to give a little bit of room to Jardier. Jardier not really taking the opportunity to make that move stick, and now it's going to be a battle to see who has the better aerodynamic performance. The Operator though with the inside line for the next left-hander is surely going to make this move work, but Jardier is actually proving me wrong. He's going around the outside in that left-hander. This is allowing Dowking to come right up onto the back of these two. Now Jardier gives up and sacrifices the position, but he's obviously going to need to be careful with Dowking there behind him. Need to make sure that he doesn't actually get a run on Jardier in front. But Operator now managing to get himself up into the top 10 with that little bit of clear air. Obviously Jardier isn't exactly a slouch when it comes to the race pace and lap times. He should be able to hold on to the back of Operator fairly easily unless he has some kind of issue, and Dowking will probably follow through as well and allow them to close up onto the guys in front, providing that they're not battling too hard. You see Dowking's dropped back off the back of Dowking a little bit, giving himself a little bit cleaner air, allowing him to just take it a little bit easier through the corners, not demand quite so much from the tyres. Obviously this is a track that does punish the left-hand tyres in particular with that long long right-handed carousel. As we see another driver coming into the pits here. I believe that is Bo, and it is. So Bo's coming in to serve his mandatory pit stop now. Obviously he was up in 4th position earlier on in the race, so unless he's had an incident somewhere along the line, he'll probably be coming out somewhere in and around the mid-pack. Obviously we're seeing Benazili here at the moment. Scott is there looking pretty close to the back of Capo, just about managing to keep 4 wheels touching those white lines, avoiding that cut track penalty. You can see him getting the decent run coming off the corner. He's now trying to pick up the slipstream. He's got that slipstream now. He's pulling out into the airflow, so that will stabilise over both cars once again. But Scott has the run here on Capo coming into the braking zone of this next left-hander. Surely he's going to be able to get this move done and dusted and make it stick. And he does. Capo doesn't really put up too much of a fight there. Doesn't really try to hold it around the outside and instead just kind of slots in behind. Manages to hold off Benazili in the process as well. Let's jump back up, further up to the front of the field, where D'Couza is still holding P1 at the moment to Adalexis. Mr. Van Orman has now managed to get himself up into P3. So he is making very, very good progress in the race, and he seems to be closing in on Adalexis in front of him, although his previous lap time of a 2:12 is obviously a good 3.8 seconds slower actually than Adalexis' previous lap time. But now that Mr. Van Orman's got some clear air, we'll see that the Mr. Van Orman's lap time will also drop down. You see here that Villalobos seems to be the man on the move with the fastest lap time previously round. Actually, no, De Heidi with a 2:07.861. Obviously, he made his pit stop fairly early to get himself some clear air. That's worked out pretty nicely. He's got Bo right in front of him. So, Bo did come into the pits from 4th position, which actually worked out pretty nicely for De Heidi. So he's probably gained a whole bunch of positions from that, providing he doesn't battle with Bo too hard and they run into an incident. It should be pretty good. Just jumping back up to the operator Jardier and Dowking 3-man train. And these guys seem to be running pretty steadily line astern in the 208. Dowking with a 2:07 previously, and also just jumping back up to Mr. Van Orman as well with a 2:08 flat to Adalexis 2:09.6. So obviously that's a good 1.6 seconds that Mr. Van Orman gained on Adalexis on the previous lap. So very, very soon, I imagine we're probably seeing those two swapping positions as Villalobos is there putting pressure onto Godfather of Shift, and 2 Desert Pack isn't too far behind. Kovacs David sat there just behind Pantera, and there is the operator Jardier and also Dowking battle, and it actually looked like that Jardier was threatening operator a little bit coming through the previous turns. He hasn't quite got the run though, and has actually dropped back a little bit. It's allowed Dowking to close up once again. Jardier actually, he seems to be much better actually getting in, tucking the car into the corners. Operator seems to be running wide in a couple of places here or there, whereas Jardier seems to be hitting his marks a little bit better, but not really being able to do too much from it, such as the pace of operator at the moment. Take a look at Dowkins on board. You can see the guys in front, and actually Pantera and also D'Couza, sorry, not D'Couza, that'll be Kovacs David actually going battle. That's allowed this 3-car train of operators, Jardier and Dowking, to close up as operator gets very sideways coming through that penultimate turn. This could potentially give a run to Jardier, but obviously operator's got the slipstream of the cars in front as well, so Jardier not really being able to make it work too much, as operator is going to have the slipstream and is going to get the run on Kovacs David there in front. Will stay on board with Jardier for the moment and use him as the cameraman watching this battle in front of us. Operator going for that inside move, looking to the inside of Pantera, makes contact. Jardier is now actually able to sneak up the inside and jump up 2-3 positions just from that one move and that one mistake that operator had gone and made. Dowking also profiting from that quite heavily and has now got himself up into 8th place. Operator doing the right thing though, and where he forced that error and actually was the cause of the contact between himself and Pantera, did momentarily give the position back, but then immediately took it again under straight line performance and into the braking zone of that left-hander. But that's unleashed Jardier and also Dowking. Dowking, I was correct. I'm trying to get all the names muddled up a little bit here. But yeah, it's unleashed these two guys with some clear air. Jardier actually got just under 2 seconds to 2 Desert Pack in front of him, and then 2 Des has a couple of seconds or so to Villalobos in front. But that is the first real big mistake that we've seen from operator make so far this season that I can recall off the top of my head, and that was very costly for him and the drivers involved. Obviously Kovacs David was very much an innocent party in that and was just unfortunately caught up with operator there on his inside, and ended up losing the positions to Jardier and Dowking without getting the opportunity to try and defend from those two positions because of that mistake that operator had. So that'll probably be a little bit frustrating for him as Mr. Van Orman gets the run on Adalexis, and Adalexis immediately diving into the pits. I think Mr. Van Orman was looking to the inside of Adalexis on the exit of the corner, and then obviously Adalexis wanting to go to the pit lane, just ended up getting out of the throttle, sacrificing the position and taking the safe option into the pit lane, which is very, very good, very thoughtful and respectful of him. Shouldn't really lose too much of it, but what will be interesting to see is actually where he comes out in relation to Bo and De Heidi. De Heidi has managed to get himself past Bo and has got himself a 3-second or so gap, so it'll be interesting to see where it comes out in relation to these two guys. See him there, stationary, not worried about taking tyres, instead just taking on the fuel. They'll be coming out of the pits relatively soon, and here comes De Heidi now actually coming up over the crest of the start-finish line. We'll see where he comes out in relation to Adalexis. Can't quite see him. There he is, going flying past there. Adalexis, will he come out in front of Bo, or will Bo get the run? No, he's managed to get out in front of Bo, which I believe was the positions that they went into the pit lane anyway, as Bo came into the pit lane from 4th place. So Adalexis has held on to his, what I will say for now, a net 3rd position, but De Heidi obviously jumped the 2, so yeah, De Heidi is looking in a very, very strong position for being well up there on the podium, possibly even with a chance of the race win, depending on how Dakuza is doing. Dakuza's doing in 208.4, and at the moment De Heidi is doing 207s. We try and see what our best lap times are. De Heidi, well, his best lap time was on the previous lap, whereas Dakuza's previous lap time was a 208.4, but his best lap time was a 207.8. So they could potentially do the same sort of lap times, but at the moment De Heidi is lapping quicker than Dakuza. Probably unknown to Dakuza as well, unless he is tuned in to our live stream here and the coverage that we are providing. But yeah, if he's not, he's obviously not going to be able to see the lap times that any of the drivers below 5th or 6th position are doing. And oh, we're seeing Dowking observing 2 Desert Pack and also the Jardier. 2 Des giving up the positions to those two without really putting up too much of a fight. I think Dowking was a little bit opportunistic there, going for the dive, as 2 Des was a little bit early on the brakes going into the turn 1, but that was Jardier and Dowking moving themselves now up into 5th and 6th position respectively, with 2 Des dropping down into 7th. The operator has managed to get himself past Kovacs David up into 8th. Kovacs David now in 9th, and Pantera down in 10th place, and he hasn't really lost too much ground to Kovacs David, so there is a little bit of a battle still going on there. Behind though, we have Benazili and Scott. Those 2 drivers are running very, very close, and Scott's had a pretty poor run coming off the previous turn. Benazili going to the outside. It's going to be pretty ambitious and very good driving if he can make that move stick. He's actually in the pound seat. He's got the inside for the next right-hander, but Scott chops across the front of Benazili and defends the position for now. Make sure that Benazili didn't really get any real opportunity to actually get fully up alongside and take that 11th position away. And Benazili has actually dropped off a couple of car lengths off the back of the Porsche as well. So let's go have a look up at the Dowking and Jardier battle, as Jardier looked to be very, very sideways coming through the kink there. This is allowing Dowking to close up. I think that the Mercedes has a bit better straight line performance in comparison to the Lamborghini anyway, but Dowking also getting the additional benefit of the slipstream on the straights. It's going to help him to close up in the draft. And we can see Godfather of Shift there in 4th position, not too far up the road, so probably in a couple of laps time the guys will be fairly close to them. And actually Dakuza, just seeing this, Dakuza's previous lap time at 209.811 with Mr. Van Orman with a 207.9, so that's 2 seconds that's been eaten out of the lead of the Kusa on that previous lap. And obviously with the Heidi being out in clear air, he's still doing 2:07s as well, but I don't think he's actually crossed the line to begin lap 16 as of yet. Seeing the operator now actually pretty close to 2 Desert Packard, actually picking up the slipstream coming down this back straight. Surely this is going to be the move done and dusted relatively easily. I don't think 2 Desert Packard is actually going to put up too much of a fight, and he doesn't. He just lets operator go, and instead is going to follow him through. Although gets pretty close to the back of the AMG in front of him on the exit of the corner. Obviously expecting operator to take a little bit more apex speed and a slightly better run off. As we pick up Dowking once again, and Jardier closing up onto the back of Godfather or Shift. We'll probably see a potential pass 4 position either coming into the next heavy braking zone, or alternatively it'll be done, I imagine, on the start-finish straight, where Jardier can try and use the slipstream to his advantage on that Porsche 911 that's in front of him. Let's see if he can make the move into turn 1. Yeah, he's definitely not close enough to make the lunge into this next braking zone. So instead he's just going to need to try and get a good run through here, try and close that gap up as much as possible, gain as much ground as possible on Godfather or Shift, as he was a little bit wide there at the exit. That's allowing Jardier to close those couple of car lengths up onto the back of the Porsche. Coming through the final turn now, he'll be looking for a good run off as Godfather or Shift was a little bit sideways there through the apex. This is Jardier's opportunity to take 4th position. I imagine he should do this relatively easily. Dowking's actually lurking in the background as well. We'll jump on board with Dowking as he's getting an almighty slipstream off of Jardier in front of him. Surely that's going to allow him to get past Godfather of Shift, and it does so in the process. Dowking was having a little bit of a cheeky look up the inside of Jardier there. Jardier very much keeping that door very much closed and prevented the Mercedes driver from making the move into turn 1. And we've got two more drivers in the pit lane. We've got Ben Azili, and we also have Kovacs David in the pit lane. There's a couple of drivers there that I also saw in the pits who have also retired. I think Cryptic MG is one of them, and I think that other driver in the Lamborghini, I think, is the Ripper. These drivers came in fairly close. Kovacs David is going to come out of the pit lane in front of Ben Azili though. Let's jump back up to this battle a little bit further up the field. You see Godfather of Shift just following Jardier and Dowking at the moment. Obviously you'll want to try and keep with these two drivers as best as he possibly can, trying not to lose too much ground to them. Hopefully use them to pull him along a little bit and see how he comes out in comparison to the other drivers in and more around Godfather of Shift's pace and positioning when the pit stop phases and the drivers actually started making their pit stops, when that whole phase begun. Obviously a lot of drivers still yet to make their pit stops. It'll be interesting to see how that will unfold and play out over the course of this race as well. At the moment my money's on De Heidi to be taking the race lead. He's been putting in some very impressive lap times of mid 207s pretty consistently over the last few laps, whereas the Kusa is up there in the 208s. And although there was quite a gap between the two at the start of the race, with De Heidi starting a little bit further down the field, kind of in and around the mid to latter part of the pack, he pitted pretty early and has instead just been running in the clear air, just banging in the lap times. As you see Pantera now in the pit lane to make his mandatory pit stop, almost going into one of the pit boxes, but then realising that his pit crew aren't there, and instead continues down the pit lane and is going to stop in the correct position for his pit crew to service his Porsche. Let's jump back up to Dowking and Jardier now in 4th and 5th position, with The drivers in front of them making their pit stops. We actually see Operator as well closing up onto the back of Godfather of Shift. Just a few attempts between them. You can see there's quite a bit of dirt and dust starting to form on the track as the drivers are running wide in the odd little place here or there, and bringing some of the some of that loose material back onto the surface of the track. That's going to make some of these braking zones and some of these corners a little bit more slippery. I think there's a bit of a dirt and dusty line forming on the outside here of the kink on the left-hand side of the track. Yeah, you can just about see it. Very faded there on the very edge of the track. The actual racing line seems to be in pretty good condition though, which is good for these drivers and Operator closing up a fair amount under braking there. Just trying to look to see where the battles are in and around on track. So Pantero's back out of the pit lane. He's behind Dubirsky and Kovacs David. You see him there in front of us as Dubirsky dips the wheels out onto the surface of the grass just outside, and there's also got Benezili not too far behind as well. Yarmo currently occupying in 21st position. He's got Capo not too far behind, and also Murphy there not too far behind as well. It looks like, no, we haven't. Murphy's there up in 12th position as Scott is now making his pit stop. He was running pretty strong in the early phase of the race, sticking pretty close to Jardier, Dowking and Operator before dropping off the back of him, and actually seeing all the red marks on the number of the driver tags. It's reminded me about the penalty, so let's take an update on that. Mr. Van Orman's got a 6-second penalty there. He would have been picking up from off tracks, so I very much doubt that he'll be able to claim those 6 seconds back from the stewards. Operator with a 2-second penalty, as well as 2 Desert Pack. Stojovic with 3 seconds. Murphy's got a 2-second penalty, as well as Adalexis. JK's got a 10-second penalty, so that's probably speeding in the pit lane for him. Capo got 4 seconds, so there's a penalty update of all the drivers. Now we're currently watching Mr. Van Orman as he's closing up onto the back of the Kuza, but his previous lap time for Mr. Van Orman was pretty poor, 2:11.9. That must have been where he picked up his penalty actually, or a substantial portion of it anyway, because that gap between the Kuza and Mr. Van Orman has been shrinking, so it couldn't have been a mistake. He obviously hasn't made his pit stop yet, so it's obviously not that. So the only remaining factor would be the penalty that he has possibly picked up, or a chunk of that penalty was picked up on the previous lap. This time we'll probably see something a little bit more representative of these two guys as well, as Dakuza will be coming across the line now, and he will be doing a 2:08.3 with Mr. Van Orman. His previous lap still saying a 2:11.641, so I think he may have got a bit of a penalty on this lap as well. Yeah, he has. He's now up to his penalty from 6 seconds to an 8-second time penalty, so losing a little bit more time there. Villalobos hanging around in 3rd position, not too far from the back of Mr. Van Orman, with Jardier in 4th, Dowking in 5th. Operator has managed to get himself past Godfather of Shift up into 6th place, so Godfather of Shift is now running in 7th with 2 Desert Pack there in 8th position in his red Audi R8. They sound very similar in terms of engine note, but they are different cars. And then we've got the Ripper is actually there. So it wasn't the Ripper who retired from the race. The Ripper is still running there in P9. So it was a mistake on my part, apologies to the Ripper. But Nestovic is actually coming under threat from Murph. Murph having a look to the outside in this braking zone. But he isn't really going to be able to do too much with that. Did try to go for a little bit of a switchback upon the exit, but Nestovic just basically just ran his line and got the good drive off the corner to prevent Murph getting the run onto the back of his Lamborghini. The Heidi there still running in those mid 207s at the moment in 12th place, with Adalexis in 13th. 14th is occupied by Bo, about 1.2 seconds behind Adalexis at the moment, with Scott back out of the pits in P15. And he's not too far from Bo as well. So that's quite a nice reference for where Jardier, Dowking and Operator could potentially come out with their pit stops. Actually going to jump up to Mr. Van Orman as he's all over the back of Dakuza. This is the battle for the race lead. So coming up over the start-finish line. Mercedes SLS with that straight line speed though is managing to hold off Mr. Van Orman despite Mr. Van Orman having the slipstream. He's having a little bit of a look to the inside of Dakuza in turn 1, but isn't really going to make that stick as Dakuza was not phased by that at all. Didn't go for the defensive line, instead just ran his line as per usual. Mr. Van Orman will be hoping for a decent run off the exit here, but isn't really able to make anything work at the moment. And is instead having to again just sit in the slipstream and just watch that Mercedes-Benz hold its ground in front of him. But it's now this part of the lap that they're coming into where Mr. Van Orman will probably have the legs over Dakuza, especially if Dakuza runs out wide like that. Could potentially see him with a slowdown penalty going outside the track limits and using all that exit curb. Yeah. Oh, Mr. Van Orman there running out wide as well. He does keep his foot in, so he's not really phased by any of the slowdown warnings that he's getting, and instead is just wanting to get in front and then just see if he can get that gap out to the drivers behind as well. It's very, very close coming through the long right-hander. Isn't really able to make anything of it at the moment. Instead just having to follow him through. This could potentially be a place where Mr. Van Orman could get the run, especially if Dakuza does do that and dips his wheels outside of the grass on the exit of the kink. He's got a little bit of a run here, having a look to the inside under braking, but isn't quite able to get his car up alongside. Instead, Dakuza shuts the door on him, and Mr. Van Orman remains in second for the moment, as Dakuza gets very sideways on the inside curb there, coming through the penultimate turn. Mr. Van Orman closing right up underneath the rear wing of that Mercedes in front of him, but again doesn't really get the run off the final turn that he really needs in order to be making use of the real slipstream and really get the run on the Mercedes to be in a good position for the overtaking move coming into the first turn. So again, I think he's just going to have to follow him through for these first couple of corners. Hope he can get a decent run off of the next right-hander onto the back straight and then potentially be in a position to try and make an overtaking maneuver into the next braking zone. And this is allowing Villalobos as well behind them in third position to close up slightly. He's not making too much headway on these guys, just eking out half a second here or there or so. Mr. Van Orman presenting himself in the mirror of Dakuza in the braking zone, but again Dakuza doesn't seem phased by Mr. Van Orman being there right behind him at all. So the guys continuing on. Let's take a look at Dowking and Jardier. Pretty much seem to be equal distance as to when we last left them, but Dowking with a 206.9 on the previous lap, closing up 3 tenths on Jardier, and also the Operator isn't too far behind as well, just over 2 seconds at the moment is that gap there. You can see him there in the background. Jump up to Murph as he's chasing the Ripper with Nesterovic there behind as well. So a little bit of a 3-car train and a battle there. Bo has managed to close back up towards the rear of Adalexis' car and got that gap back under 1 second. He's not quite close enough yet to really do anything about it. Benazili seems to be under threat from Dubirsky. He's got Kovacs David in front of him, and Kovacs David is right on the back of Pantera as well in the Porsche 911, so a decent little 4-car train here. Yamo, the fan favourite, isn't too far off behind either. Just about 2 to 3 seconds between him, and actually Kovacs David has a pretty poor run, and this is allowing Benazili to have a look to the inside in the next braking zone. Very sideways there from Benazili. That's gone and forced Kovacs David wide. That's allowed Nesterovic, oh sorry, Dubirsky, my apologies, Dubirsky up into P18. Swap of positions there as Benazili was very opportunistic. I think he ran a little bit deep and kind of lost the rear end a little bit. Here we see actually Mr. Van Orman making contact with the race leader Dakuza. forcing his way through the inside, as that was what I would call the proper turn 2. But Mr. Van Ormen would surely be under threat from Dakuza coming down into the next braking zone, as Dakuza seems to have the straight line advantage over the Lamborghini. Has also got the slipstream. Dakuza looking to the outside. He's going to try and make the move, stick around the outside here. Goes a little bit deep though. Mr. Van Ormen does give him space, but Dakuza does try and come back to the inside of him for the next turn. Thinks better of it though, and slots in into P2, but that was pretty forceful from what we saw when we picked up Mr. Van Ormen. Obviously we didn't see the entirety of the move when we picked up these two drivers. Mr. Van Ormen was already alongside, so I don't know, I can't really point blame on either of the two drivers there for that incident, but there was definitely contact between the two. That certainly did aid Mr. Van Ormen in taking that position away, and it's also aided massively with Villalobos allowing to close up onto the back of Dakuza, get that gap to just over a second now between the two, and Jardier and Dowking both in the 206s. Very impressive lap times from those two, decreasing this gap continuously, as we're currently on lap 23 out of 42, so we're just over the halfway mark. A number of the drivers will probably be looking to potentially make their pit stops relatively soon, but with the field spread that we currently have, it's no real advantage for anyone unless they're really stuck up behind someone else and can't get the overtaking opportunity done. And obviously you need to be very cautious of where they're actually going to come out in relation to the other drivers as well. The Heidi is currently the leader of the group of drivers who have made their pit stops, currently occupying 12th position, 42 seconds off the lead at the moment, but he's been putting in some very solid lap times consistently in the mid 207s, which is a good half a second to a second and a half faster than what the leaders have been doing in their previous laps. So obviously he's been making ground there, and it'll be interesting to see when the leaders actually pit where the Heidi will be in relation to them. And we can see Murph here, currently situated between Ripper and Nastalovic. Just noticed that M-Power is one of the drivers that we have lost previously. Oh no, M-Power's there in 22nd position. He's still going on, but with a pretty battered AMG actually, by the looks of it. So he's had some issues somewhere along the line. 1 minute 20 off the lead. That's a good, well, that's over half the length of the circuit. So he's pretty far from the positions that he would want to be in. Hopefully he has that damage that we can see here on our screen. Hopefully he actually has that repaired and is able to run his usual race pace, as it were. Seems to be doing mid 208s at the moment, which is kind of the pace of the leaders, it seems. So it doesn't seem like he's too far off the pace if he does have any damage, but I imagine there will be some effect on his car. And actually Dowking has actually lost touch with Jardier a little bit. He's allowed operator to get within a second, or round about a second, to his teammate. There you can see the amount of ground that Dowking has lost somewhere along the line. So I think there may have been a potential mistake on this lap by Dowking. We'll see as they come across the line. Yeah, there you go, a 208.7 to Jardier's 207.2. So a good second and a half that is lost to the fourth place man in front of him. And obviously with operator's lap of a 207.2 as well, that's a second and a half that operator's gained on his teammate. Jump back up to the battle for P2. Obviously Dakuza losing the lead to Mr. Van Ormen a few laps ago. Villalobos has the gap now to around 6/10 of a second, around about half a second. Looked like he may have made a little bit of ground in that left-hander that they previously went through. Obviously this is new generation Mercedes GT3 versus old generation Mercedes GT3, with the older generation SLS leading these two cars, and the newer model, the Mercedes AMG, is there behind. A bit more of a refined package, especially in terms of aerodynamic performance and better braking as well compared to the older SLS, although I think the SLS probably does have a better straight line speed and a bit more oomph coming off the corners in comparison to the AMG that Villalobos is driving. But it'll be interesting to see how that actually works out this time round, as they're going to be coming through the final turn now and actually coming onto the start-finish straight. So Villalobos will have the slipstream here. Looks like he's had the slightly better run off of the turn. He's now very much in the tow and in the draft of the Kuza in front, and he's gaining a little bit of ground, as you can see here. As looking to the inside into turn 1, Kuza though just about giving him enough racing room, a little bit of a squeeze, a little bit of door rubbing and wheel banging there on the exit, but no real harm done. Villalobos squeezing Kuza there a little bit in the entry to turn 2, but Villalobos taking that second position away, but is now very much under threat, as Kuza is there looking at the back of the Mercedes in front, and is being forced to go to the outside. Will Kuza be able to make it work? He tried doing this on Mr. Van Orman previously, didn't quite get as far up along the outside as he did previously, again trying to switch back underneath to look to the inside in the next turn. Instead it's just settling in underneath that rear wing of Villalobos in front, and that is Kuza conceding the position to the newer generation Mercedes GT3 car in front of him, and that little trade of positions and trading of paint has allowed Jardier to come into the fray as well. And you can see, oh, actually in the background, Operator and Dalking have switched positions somewhere along the lines, possibly on the previous lap or potentially on this lap, but these two drivers were the other way around. But yeah, Jardier is now very much being brought into the fray as the Kuza goes out very wide. This could be Jardier's chance actually, coming into the next braking zone. He's got an almighty run. He's going to look to the inside, coming into the braking zone. He's up alongside him. The Lamborghini should have the better braking performance, and with that inside line does manage to take that third position. So Jardier is now up onto the podium potentially, depending on what happens with his pit stops. He's got 28 litres of fuel remaining, so he's got a decent amount in the tank. He can still go a relatively long way, and Kuza diving to the pits, as we saw. That's not going to hinder Operator or Dalking in any way then. And those two drivers are going to sneak up another position without too much issue, and with the clear air that they have in front of them, they'll probably make good use of that and try and hunt down Jardier up in front of them. And yeah, Dalking there, you can see a good half a second or so slower than Operator on the previous lap, so I think that's where the trade-in positions may have come from. But this is going to be interesting. Where is Kuza going to come out in relation to Heidi? Heidi's actually coming up over the crest of the start-finish line. Kuza is making his way to the pit exit. He's taking the fuel on board that he needs, but it looks like Heidi is actually going to take the position away, and yeah, that's a decent gap between the two. We'll see in just a second the actual gap. There you go, about 4 seconds that Heidi has managed to extend over Kuza in that running of the clear air. So the strategy that Heidi has employed for this race has worked out very, very nicely for him. The only thing that he needs to worry about now is whether he's actually got enough fuel to go to the rest of the race distance to see the checkered flag. I very much doubt that he has incorrectly calculated that and has timed it right, but you can see he's got 54 litres there to Kuza's 63 litres, so Kuza's got a little bit more fuel than the Porsche in front of him, but the Mercedes could actually be eating more fuel on a per lap basis in comparison to the Porsche. And there we can see Alexis in 12th position. Scott's not too far behind and has actually got himself now ahead of Bo. Bo's just been running a relatively quiet race. He was up in 4th position previously, but now obviously with the drivers and the pit stop phase is ongoing, various different strategies in play at the moment. I could see Bo dropping a little bit further down the field. Let's jump back up to the sharper end of the field. Dowking and Operator seem to be the two closest cars on the circuit at the moment that I can see. Unless Kovacs David and Jarmo, no, not quite. Jarmo's managed to get himself ahead of Kovacs David. So I think there may have been a mistake from him somewhere along the line. Jarmo now up into 18th place, with Ben Azili a little bit further up the road in front of him. But yeah, these two Hot Wheels Mercedes AMGs running pretty much line astern. Dowking doesn't really seem to have an issue following his teammate in relatively close proximity. Running near enough identical lap times. There's just 0.09 of a second difference between the two. Some very good, impressive pace in the mid 207s. Jardier was a little bit quicker on the previous lap though, with low 207, but obviously with the pressure being lifted off his shoulders with the pursuit of the Mercedes behind him, now a little bit more clear air between himself and them, he can focus pretty much solely on Villalobos in front of him, try and close that gap down and see what he can do in terms of trying to take away that second position. Mr. Van Orman is continuing to put the laps in, doing low 207s. He won't be taking a trip to the pit lane this time round, and instead we'll be continuing on to begin lap 29. He's currently got a gap of about 4.5 seconds to Villalobos behind him. Just look at the lap time difference between Villalobos and Jardier on the previous lap, so a good 0.6 of a second or so that Jardier has managed to take out of Villalobos last time round. That gap is decreasing both time-wise and also visually, as we can see. Dowking continuing to follow his teammate round. Bo dropped a few car lengths off the back of Scott from the last time that we saw him. The Bursky still hunting down Pantera there, as you can see. Kovacs David is not too far off the back of Jarmo. Murphy not too far behind Nesterovic, and then Empower is not too far behind Murphy either. Battle of the two Mercedes AMGs. Empower really seem to be struggling with this race. You usually see him kind of similar pace to Jardier, Operator and Dowking, and unfortunately he hasn't been able to make his way up through the field like the other three mentioned drivers have been able to do so, and it's quite far off the back of those. But obviously those other three drivers of Jardier, Operator and Dowking have yet to make their pit stops. Neither has Villalobos nor has Mr. Van Orman, Godfather of Shift, 2 Desert Pack, the Ripper, are also drivers who have yet to make their pit stop. Is 9th place man De Heidi, who is the leader, as far as I'm aware anyway, of those who have made their stop so far in this race. Just currently riding on board at the moment with Jardier. So he's threading his Lamborghini around the Road America circuit. Hasn't really seemed to make too much ground on Villalobos in front of him. Be interesting to see what the lap time difference is between the two. This time round, there you go. Near enough identical lap times, just 0.03 of a second between them. Whereas the Operator has managed to take 2 temps out, although has just picked up a time penalty, I believe. Or was it Dowking who just picked up a time penalty? I just saw one of the two names just flash up red And there you can see the penalties that the drivers have. So Mr. Van Ormen with 8 seconds, Villalobos with 2, Operator with 4, with Dalking with 1, 2 Des and 2 seconds, likewise with Adalexis. Kovacs David now with a 32-second penalty. He may be able to redeem some of that time back, depending on what the cause for that amount of time penalty actually was. Nesterovic, a 3-second penalty with Empower, 4 seconds, 2 seconds on Murph, and 4 seconds there for Capo. So there is your penalty update, and Jardier is actually very, very close to the back of Villalobos now, this time round as they come into the very long right-hander. Villalobos actually using the brakes a little bit coming into this corner. Traditionally you just tend to lift off a little bit, but that's kind of worked quite nicely in Villalobos' favour as he's managed to get the good run coming off the exit of the corner. Obviously brought himself in tighter. Gets the good run coming through the kink as well. No issues for either of the two drivers coming through that. Coming into the braking zone. Things look pretty routine there for both as well. I think Jardier was a little bit tidier to the apex through the corner. Didn't run quite as wide on the exit. Both of them running a very, very nice line coming through that final turn. Jardier bringing that gap down to around 3 to 4 tenths of a second now between the two drivers. He'll be picking up that slipstream and trying to use it to slowly reel himself into the back of Villalobos in front, and presents himself in the mirrors just as they go into the braking zone, trying to distract Villalobos a little bit, but takes up position on the racing line coming through the turn into turn 2 now. Jardier with a tighter line on the exit, managing to bring the car back in towards the apex. Should see him with a slightly better run coming down this straight. Again, he's slowly closing up in the slipstream, looking to the inside. Is he going to go for the lunge low on the braking? No, they do both jump on the brakes at exactly the same time. Both drivers making the apex. Jardier though taking a more curb on the inside and gets a better run through the corner. Again, a bit tidier there by Jardier coming through that left-hander, the right-hander. Villalobos eking out a car length or two. It's brilliant to see from this roof camera the lines that the two drivers are taking and comparing. Obviously with the trackside cameras it's a little bit more difficult to get a full understanding of that, whereas the onboard shots do allow you a better understanding of the lines that the drivers are actually taking and where they're actually gaining the ground. Both drivers very nicely through. Turn. So we jump back to the off-board cameras now. So we watch these guys come round. They've got best part of 11 laps remaining in this race. Let's have a look at the fuel loads. Mr. Van Ormen's got 9 litres of fuel. Villalobos with 7.3. Jardier saved a little bit more. He's got 11 litres of fuel and he's got a decent run as well. Coming off the final turn, he's much closer than he was on the previous lap. This could potentially be him having a look to the inside, coming into turn 1. Is he going to go for the move? Villalobos kind of looking semi-defensive, and at the moment Jardier is just going to follow him through. Instead, I think he's going to try and line himself up for an overtaking manoeuvre into the next heavy braking zone for the next left-hander at the end of this straight. So he needs the decent run coming off the exit here. That's a good run that he's got there. And you can see he's picking up that slipstream. Villalobos moving over to the right-hand side of the circuit. I think he's going to allow Jardier to come to the inside for this turn. Jardier's got the inside line. Who's going to be the later of the late breakers? Both of them diving onto the brakes at the same time. Villalobos pretty much just handing the position to Jardier, not really putting up too much of a fight there. And instead thinking better of it, trying not to lose too much time to the drivers around him. And instead is thinking more about getting a decent points position for this race. So that is Jardier now up into P2. And obviously with that change of position there wasn't really too much time lost, so Operator and Dowking wouldn't have really made too much gains from that. These guys have been pretty much in and around similar sort of pace the last few laps. I know Dowking did drop off the back of his teammate a little bit a few laps ago, but he's managed to close that back up and is very much there, just a car length or two behind that nice metallic dark blue Mercedes AMG GT3 in front of him. So they're running through, and obviously we'll be wanting to hunt down Villalobos in front of them. And Jardier, obviously with the clear air, will be unleashed and be wanting to hunt down Mr. Van Orman. And Dowking is actually diving into the pits. Now this will be interesting to watch. So is Villalobos. Villalobos making the pits trip to pit lane as well. So this will be interesting to watch to see where they will come out in relation to De Heidi. Whereabouts is he on the circuit? He's coming into the heavy braking zone of the right-hander before coming into the penultimate turn. And obviously both of these drivers will be taking on fuel to see them to the end of the race. Dowking's pit box is a little bit further down the line in comparison to Villalobos. 2 Desert Pack goes through, but he hasn't made his pit stop yet. Godfather of Shift has also made his trip to the pit lane. Let's see where De Heidi comes out in relation to the other drivers there. They both are. He's actually going to pass them both. Surely this is going to be the lead for De Heidi when Mr. Van Orman makes his pit stop. De Heidi seems to be very much in the pound seat. It's got a decent gap to Villalobos, who comes out in front of Dowking. I'm not sure if Dowking made up too much ground there in the pit lane. Gap just under 2 seconds. And then the gap between Villalobos and De Heidi, 6.5 seconds, as you can see. So that very consistent pace and strategy that De Heidi has employed here in round 4 is working very, very nicely at the moment. And he certainly seems like the man who we need to keep an eye out on for the race win. It all depends on how much pace Mr. Van Orman has. If he can keep banging in those 206s, 0.9s, he may be able to save a little bit of this gap and some of the lead to De Heidi, but he's now actually making his pit stop. He needs to with 1.7 litres of fuel left in the tank. Jardier also diving into the pits with 3.9 litres. Operator making his pit stop with 1.4 seconds. So the guys are being forced into the pits with their lower fuel loads. 2 Desert Packs should be able to continue on with his 7.5 litres. He should be able to go on for certainly another lap, possibly 2, maybe 3, depending on the amount of fuel used per lap in that Audi. But all eyes on Mr. Van Orman and also De Heidi, where they're going to come out in relation to each other. There is De Heidi coming through the penultimate turn now. He'll be coming into the final turn. Is Mr. Van Orman? Yes, he is. He's rolling down the pit lane now. Is Jardier now on the move? Yes, he is. He's now moving down the pit lane. Operator still stationary just for the moment. Where is De Heidi? He's now coming up over the crest on the start-finish line. Be interesting to see where they come out in relation to each other. There is Mr. Van Orman coming out of the pit lane. There is Jardier coming out of the pit lane as well. So Mr. Van Orman retains the lead from De Heidi. Mr. Van Orman doing enough to hold off the Porsche for now. But with De Heidi now being in a net second place, 2 Desert Pack actually making his pit stop this time round. It's only the Ripper who is yet to make his pit stop. But yeah, with De Heidi now in the net second position, can see the race leader there up in front of him. That is going to be an inspiring sight. He'll want to use that to motivate him and push on, keep banging in those lap times that he has been doing in the previous laps. Obviously, he hasn't had a pit stop that would have kind of broken up his rhythm and his flow. Very much being a nice, smooth, flowing rhythm. He just needs to up his pace a little bit and try and close that gap. Just over 2 seconds is that gap that he needs to close up. But also, Mr. Van Orman does also have his penalty, which is now 10 seconds. So currently, in the positions that they are in, De Heidi has the net race lead. And providing that the Heidi doesn't make a mistake anywhere between now and the end of the race, he is very much going to be there, and could see himself up on the top step of the podium. Jardier should take second with the current distances between himself and Mr. Van Orman. The operator, though, is going to be very, very close between them, and actually the operator has come out of the pits ahead of Villalobos. Either that or they came out very close together, and operator has managed to turn up the wick and get the position within his out lap. And there you can see Dowking in the background has lost a bit of time to his teammate. What is the fuel load difference? 33.9 and 36.9. Yeah, so there you can see a good 2 to 3 litres difference. The Ripper now actually making his pit stop. So this is now essentially our lead, or our current standings that we can see here. Once the Ripper comes out of the pit lane, all the drivers will have completed their pit stops, obviously forced by the fuel loads with this 90-minute race. They had a mandatory pit stop that they needed to make anyway, but yeah, it's very good and very interesting to see how this race has unfolded and developed. The first 10 laps or so were very, very hectic. It's very difficult to actually pick out what battles to keep an eye on, as obviously the faster guys were working their way through the field as we started with a reverse grid order. And then the strategy started to play out with a few guys jumping in at the earliest opportunity with their pit stops to see themselves make it to the end of the race. The Heidi being one of them, and has got himself up into second place despite starting in and around, if we can work this out, I think around 15th, 16th place is where the Heidi actually started the race from. I think he made up a number of positions before he actually got to his pit stop, but obviously making that pit stop early, getting himself that clear air, banging in those good lap times, he's jumped all the other cars that were around him through the pit stop phase with the strategy and got himself up into that second place. Very impressive. Good stuff there from De Heidi. Villalobos doing a good job here of holding on to the back of operator, not letting him run away at the moment. Villalobos runs a little bit deep there in the corner, was a little bit shy from the apex. That will cost him a tenth or two. But still, that gap lingering in and around half a second to 7 tenths or so. Doing a good job. Let's look a little bit further back down the field as 2 Desert Pack is back out of the pit lane. He's got Pantera, the Birdski, and also the Ripper for company. The Ripper actually come out the pit lane in 15th place. The Birdski running a little bit wide there, coming through the kink. So we've got a good 4-5 car train. At the back of this is Yamo, the fan favourite, is obviously going to be spurred on and motivated to see these guys all close and battling away. He'll want to get involved with this and see what he can do in terms of potentially making up some positions. Doesn't really look like any of the guys are really close enough to make any overtaking opportunities coming down the start-finish straight. It's right on board with the Birdski. Actually, 2 Desert Pack is going a little bit defensive there to Pantera coming down towards turn 1. But 2 Des wasn't really under too much threat. See the gap still maintaining relatively equal distance at the moment. Pantera coming through. Turn, he'll be looking to get a decent run off of that previous corner. 2 Des isn't actually too far off the back of Bo either. Bo in 11th place, so he's obviously lost a whole bunch of positions with the pit stop phases, as earlier on he was running in 4th position, and Pantera running down the outside of 2 Desert Pack coming into the left-hander. 2 Des though making good defensive move to block that off, and it's the Birdski who's coming up the inside of Pantera. He's given a little bit of contact, a little bit of a squeeze there through the left-hander, but Pantera's going to have the inside line, squeezing the Birdski there on the exit. That is going to be Pantera holding on to that 13th position. Yamo also coming in as well. He's there putting the pressure onto the Ripper in front of him. He's going to get a decent run coming off the exit of the corner, so it seems like Yamo has the pace over the Ripper. The Ripper on an out lap at the moment, so the lap times that we're seeing, the previous lap times, isn't really representative of what the Ripper can actually do. But you can see that up in the distance, Pantera and Dubirsky going at it, battling for position as well. It's giving a little bit of breathing room to Desert Back. Now you can see Dubirsky's dropped off the back of Pantera a little bit. Yarmo not close enough this time round to make a move into that right-hander, although he does get crossed up a little bit, touching that curb on the inside that unsettled the car. Does very well to hold on to that and keep things going. Here we see Dubirsky though getting a slightly better run through the final turn in comparison to Pantera. Pantera was a little bit crossed up with the rear end of that Porsche, trying to break free and away from him, but he wrestled it back in line. Dubirsky picking up the slipstream now of the Porsche in front of him, presenting himself in the mirrors, coming into the braking zone of the turn one, closing up a little bit but not close enough this time round. Jarmo not close enough this time round either to try and make the move into turn one, using the grass there on the exit of the corner. Guy still running similar sort of distances, and we can see that Villalobos is still there hanging on to the back of operator Dow King, just under 2 seconds now behind them. Here is Dubirsky, Pantera, and also 2 Desert Pack. Pantera having a little bit of a look to the inside of 2 Desert Pack, but isn't able to make the move. Although no! Oh dear! That's quite catastrophic there. 2 Desert Pack getting a little bit crossed up and losing the car on the exit of the turn. Went into the front of Pantera. Also caught Dubirsky in that as well. Surely that's going to be a whole bunch of damage for 2 Desert Pack as he managed to rejoin back onto the circuit. Now in 17th place, he's lost the rear wing. That is very unfortunate there for 2 Desert Pack. And he's obviously being kind there to get out of the way of the other drivers. But that is obviously now Pantera up into 12th place. Dubirsky up into 13th. Ripper up into 14th, and Jarmo now up into 15th place. I think Jarmo was having a little bit of a look at the Ripper, but with the sideways Audi on the exit of the turn, didn't really have too much room to go. Now the Ripper's having a look down the inside of Dubirsky into the next braking zone. We can see some damage on the front of that green Lamborghini, and the Ripper making that move stick, although Dubirsky trying to switch back underneath, not really quite able to make it work. Don't really think there's going to be too much point in Dubirsky trying to make a pit stop with the damage that he has. With only 5 laps remaining, he may go to the pit lane, but nope, he's going to try and slug it out for the remainder of the race and just try to hold off the position. So the Ripper's now past the Lamborghini. He has now got his eyes and sights locked onto the back of the Porsche. He's closing up under the slipstream, looking to the inside, coming towards turn one. Surely this is going to be the move done and dusted. Coming into this first turn, does so under braking, but Pantera tries to come back at him. Ooh, that was Dubirsky running very, very deep. That's gifted the position to Jarmo in the exit of the first turn, so Jarmo doesn't have to worry about trying to make the position there. Just focus on the 2 guys in front. They are battling away, and there you can see the gap between Pantera and the Ripper. Seems like Pantera has picked up a little bit of damage as well, has lost some top end speed as he's losing ground to the Lamborghini in front of him, despite him being in the slipstream. Yeah, you can see the front bumper on driver's left is a bit mashed and mangled, not quite sat flush with the bodywork of the front end of that Porsche, so that's going to hurt his straight line speed and his aerodynamics at the front of his car. And the Ripper's now obviously up into 12th place. Jarmo will be looking to try and close these 2 down and see if he can try and pick up a position here as well. Villalobos still holding on very nicely onto the back of operator, isn't letting him go at all, as we're now down to 19 drivers in this race. Empower seems to have retired from the session, so has Murphy. Seems to have dropped as well. Murph is still going on. Just need to double check to see which of the 2 Murphs it was that was still running. But yeah, Villalobos still hanging on to the back of 4th place man operator. Mr. Van Orman still holding that 2-second lead to De Heidi. I think he's increased it a little bit. Jardier has been closing the gap on Jardier on the previous lap, and I think, yeah, De Heidi's actually now got himself a 2-second penalty. So he now, as the positions currently are with the gaps that they currently have, De Heidi is actually now in a net second position. If Jardier can stay within that 2-second window, Jardier with no track limit penalties at the moment, he could be taking the win here. So De Heidi's made a mistake somewhere along the line and let that win slip unless he can eke out a bit more of a gap to Jardier. Although it seems like Jardier seems to have the pace a little bit over the Porsche driver, as De Heidi hasn't really closed up on Mr. Van Ormen. I think the gap did manage to get in and around 2 seconds at one point. I think it was just under that 2-second threshold, but Mr. Van Ormen has put in some laps and extended that back out. I think also possibly with De Heidi's track penalty as well, trying to give up that time that he's not really getting. Yeah, he's gone and lost that ground, is what I was meant to say, sorry, at the end of that. But yeah, let's have a look at De Heidi's lap time this time around. So Mr. Van Ormen does a 2:06.7, very good lap time there, 2:07.1, so he's lost ground a little bit. Jardier doing a pretty much identical lap time. The gap's still in and around that 1.7 mark at the moment. Operator has come across the line with a low 2:07, and Villalobos with a 2:06.8, obviously in the slipstream of Operator in front of him. Seeing the lines that he's taking is obviously able to find a little bit of time in terms of lap time, and still very much all over the back of Operator. He may actually have a decent run coming off the exit of this turn here. Obviously he's got the slipstream, but he isn't really making any ground coming down to the braking zone here, so it's not going to be close enough to put that 4th position under threat as of yet. But he gets really, really close there in and around the apex. This could be a decent run. No, not quite for Villalobos. I thought he was going to try and use that momentum to get up alongside Operator and into the inside of the previous turn. It seems like Operator struggling a little bit with traction on the exit of that slow left-hander. Yeah, Villalobos very much applying the pressure here, sniffing at that 4th position. Very, very interesting. Did Villalobos? Yes, he did have a 2-second penalty, and at the moment he does have that 4th position because of that 4-second penalty that the Operator has. Dowking has a 1-second penalty now. There's 2 Desert Pack just getting out the way of these guys, not interfering with them in any way, shape or form. Dowking at the moment 2 seconds behind Villalobos. So I don't think there's going to be a change of position there, but Operator could lose the position to his teammate and actually come home in 6th position unless he's able to get that gap out. So a momentary flash there to indicate that the gaps have closed down between Jardier and De Heidi. Gap now 1.4 seconds as Jardier does a 2:06.6. Very impressive lap times here from the 3-time GT3 League winner. He's obviously found his mojo a little bit, has had some better luck, and is now smelling blood for that race win. And at the moment, providing he can keep himself clean within those white lines, doesn't make any mistakes, he should come away with the race win, with the 2 drivers of Mr. Van Ormen and De Heidi in front of them, both having time penalties. Jardier again just demonstrating very nice clean lines, using the full width of the track, using the curbs, but not too much that unsettles the car. Very much focused and very much in the zone. This is very much the Jardier that we've known from previous seasons. He's had a bit of a rough time in the first 3 rounds, as we've mentioned, but he's looking strong here. there is Villalobos, staring at the back of that blue Mercedes in front of him. The operator was taking a very wide line into the carousel section, but was obviously managed to tighten up for the later apex to get the run off. There's Dubirsky hunting down Pantera in front of us. That battle resuming, actually not resuming as it was. Obviously, yeah, Dubirsky and also Pantera did have that contact with 2 Desert Pack, which cost them an awful lot. And actually, Jarmo's actually gone and lost a whole bunch of time as well. He's now down in 17th place. I'm pretty sure he was further up the field. Can't see any obvious signs of damage to the front of his car. So here we go then, the final lap of this 90-minute race. Jardier got the gap to under a second now to De Heidi in front of him. 2.7 seconds is the gap between P1 and P2. And providing that Jardier can hang in and around this sort of distance, he should come away with the race win here, which obviously he'll be very, very pleased about. Villalobos still on the back of operator, but not really quite close enough. So watch him come through. Tight left-hander for the final time. And I think Jardier is very much aware of the penalties that the guys that are the guys in front of him have. So he'll obviously just be taking it somewhat relatively easy and just making sure that he hangs in and around this sort of area to take the positions away once those penalties have been counted into the results. But yeah, Villalobos still looking very close to the back of operator. Will he actually get a decent run coming through the kink here and actually be in with a decent shout of making the pass into the next corner? No, he had to lift out a little bit there in the dirty air, but here is your current, and unfortunately for Mr. Van Orman, temporary race leader. He's put in a very, very good, strong performance starting from P12, managed to work his way through the traffic, through the field, and is going to come across the line to take the race win momentarily, but with that 10-second penalty is going to see him drop behind De Heidi and also Jardier. So Jardier is your race winner as he celebrates in mass style. Dalking and Villalobos coming across the line. Operator also coming across the line, actually behind those two drivers as well. He did have that heftier penalty which would have seen him drop behind him anyway. And D'Couza was leading for a significant portion of this race, putting in a very solid performance leading from the start. Comes home in 7th. Adalexis will come home in 8th place with Scott hot on his heels. Godfather of Shift coming home in 10th place, with Bo there in 11th position, coming across the line with a flash of the lights. The Ripper coming home in 12th place, managing to keep his nose clean despite very much being in amongst the thick of it. Kovacs David coming in 14th place as Nesterovic hops up ahead of him as he didn't have the penalty. Dubirsky is going to hold off Murph for 14th and 15th position. Pantera will come home in a very beat up 17th place. Jarmo, we can see, has Pantera actually made it across the start finish line yet? No, he hasn't. He's still crawling. He's literally crawling along up the crest now. Jarmo, where is he? He's quite a bit further back. I don't think Jarmo is quite close enough to nip that 17th place away. This is really unusual for Pantera going this slow. I know there's a lot of damage there, unless he's got a heavily crabbing car. here is Yama actually coming through the final turn. Will he actually be able to take this 17th position away as Pantera is slowed to an absolute crawl? Here they come across the start-finish line, and Yama took it. Yama got the position over Pantera, obviously with the penalties as well. It would have swapped the positions around, but here is your confirmed order then. Jardier taking the race win here for round 4. Very impressive drive by himself, getting his form back. The Heidi with a very, very solid effort and a very, very good strategy, picking up second place with Mr. Van Orman in third, unfortunately with the penalty, that 10-second penalty that he picked up through the off-tracks. Dowking coming home in fourth, beating Villalobos and Dowking's teammate Operator in 6th position. So the first time that Operator hasn't won the race this season. Dakuzo in 7th with Adalexis in 8th. Scott in 9th position. Godfather of Shift will round out your top 10 with Bo in 11th. The Ripper 12th. Nostalovic in 13th place. Dabursky 14th. Murph in 15th place. Kovacs David in 16th. Yama in 17th. Pantera in 18th place. And then 2 Desert Pack coming across the line in 19th place. And Benizili and JK there both classified as retired. So very, very good race by these drivers. Very impressive stuff to see. Very much enjoyed that by all the guys. Putting on a phenomenal show. And what we shall do now is look to see if any of the drivers are up for some driver interviews. I can see that Jardier is ready for his interview. So we shall bring him into the box in just a moment. We'll find out. We'll just wait a little bit to see if any of the other drivers as well are also wanting to come and have a chat. So yeah, let's get Jardier into the commentary box. The man who came away with the race win. How are you feeling, sir? I imagine it's pretty ecstatic. Oh, no, I'm not hearing anything that you're saying. Bear with me 1 second. It's a technical issue. My end. I know exactly what it is. Let me just sort this 1 moment. Let's try that. Hopefully I can hear you this time.
Hey! I feel
yes!
awesome!
Yeah, we can hear you. Excellent. The man who comes away with the race win for round 4. You sound very happy.
I am, because since the season started, I was really unlucky, you know. Got disconnected in the first race, then the second race was bad with the strategy. Third race, I got crashed a lot as well, so I was really hoping this race will be different, and I had like the most amazing race in like 3 months, because everybody was awesome. I had some amazing fights all the race long, and my pace was really, really good. And of course, I was incredibly lucky because the Heidi got penalty, Omen got penalty, and then actually got me the win. So I'm really happy, but yeah, I would rather win on a racetrack, you know?
Yeah, definitely very impressive drive by you, and it certainly seems like you have your mojo back, as you sound very, very happy and very motivated by that. Hopefully your luck will turn for you. What was your strategy for that race? Was it literally just run until the tank was near enough dry and then make the pit stop?
Yeah, that was the original strategy, because I wanted to like do the same as I did in Spa last season. I wanted to pit as late as possible, but of course I was watching my opponents, you know, the Dalking Operator, my teammate Omen and other people. But I think yeah, I knew the Heidi will be interesting, because the Heidi is always genius with the undercut. Yep. So I was like, I think like when I seen Operator mistake and his penalty, and when I have seen Dalking dropping back and Omen with getting an 8 or 10 second penalty, I knew the only person who can actually defeat me was Villalobos at the time and the Heidi. And when I left the pit stop, I absolutely seen the Heidi did amazing job. And I was just very lucky in the end, because he got a 2-second penalty in the end, and that basically won me the race.
Excellent stuff. Well, congratulations to you. A very, very impressive performance. Hopefully we'll see that continue and see you having a little bit more luck. But thanks very much for joining us, Jardier. I shall let you go now and enjoy the rest of your evening. Go have yourself a beer crack open a bottle of champagne, enjoy it. Mr. Van Orman, hello sir.
Good day.
How are you feeling after that race? You put in a very good performance. You started P12, if I remember correctly. You worked your way up through the field pretty quickly, and obviously doing a lot of the battling on track, but then unfortunately you had the time penalties that see you lose that race win. How are you feeling?
Well, I'm actually pretty happy. I mean, it was a good performance. That was what I was looking for, to be honest, because it has been a while. I know I was piling up those penalties, but you know, if you take those penalties, if you get them, let's say after turn 4, it's really difficult to get rid of them. It will probably take you like 4 seconds or 5 seconds to get rid of a penalty, you know, which is not worth it anyway. So yeah, at some point I knew when I got to 8 and 10. I knew it was going to cost me the race, of course, but then still P3 is very nice. I saw the guys behind me also having a couple of penalties, so that saved at least a podium, I guess, right? I'm third, right?
You were third, yes.
Yeah.
I think you had the gap to Dowking anyway, who was the driver who came home in 4th. I think you had that 10-second gap, so you were, yeah, it was just the Heidi and Jardier that you were under threat from.
Yeah, the Heidi, where did he came from? He pitted early, I guess, right?
Yeah, he did. I think he pitted at the earliest opportunity, and he was banging in mid 207s all the way through the race, mid to low 207s, and it was very consistent pace, and obviously that helped save him. But it was very good, very entertaining, and a lot of fun to watch you battle your way through the field physically to the lead, and then obviously make your pit stop. I'm guessing that was your strategy for the race.
Yeah. I knew that somehow, I don't know why, but somehow after the pit your car would feel better. I don't know why, but it is like it is, even with more fuel. But on the other hand, obviously, if you go early, you will carry like 35 liters of fuel for a complete race. So it was basically a coin flip. So I decided, because I got to the front at some point, to skip all the traffic and go as late as possible. So that's what I did.
Yeah, well, very impressive race by you. Very pleased that you got a good result here as well, and thank you very much for providing some interesting battling and good overtaking action as well. I shall let you head off and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you very much, mate.
Thank you very much, Joki.
Well, it doesn't seem like there's any other drivers remaining in the ready for interview box, so I think we're going to wrap it up here for round 4. Thank you very much for everybody who tuned into the chat, especially those who persevered through the technical issues that we were having at the beginning. Hopefully we won't encounter those again in the next round. Hopefully things can go a little bit smoother. As you can tell, doing a whole 2 hours, well, yeah, 2 hours and 20 odd minutes or so solo is having a little bit of a toll on my voice, so I'm going to shoot off and wrap things up there. Thank you very much for everybody tuning in and watching. Make sure you are subscribed to the Apex Online Racing channel so you don't miss out on any league racing action in the future. And of course, I'm going to shamelessly plug my own channel. Make sure to go check Yorkie065 out on YouTube as well for any Project Cars 2 videos, and also the most, I guess, complete guide of Project Cars 2 with the Insider's Guide series. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Hopefully we shall see you again soon, but in the meantime, thanks very much for watching. Have fun, stay safe, and take care.